Well, hello, welcome back to Tail 3 Cabins. It's been about 10 months since we've been down here. This is our Smoky Mountain vacation rental cabin right here. And it seems that we've been on a bad trend for the last couple of years, especially during the holidays. We've got some pretty good snowstorms come through here, and those snowstorms have created power outages, sometimes lasting 2-3 days. And it always seems to be around Christmas and New Year's, right when you really want to be renting this place out. Also, this area is good for some pretty good windy days. In fact, we have a high wind warning tomorrow where we're expecting gusts up to about 70 miles per hour. And then not too long ago, about 800 feet behind you there, up on the next road, an unfortunate incident happened where a car just happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. And we had some high winds and it knocked a tree down, fell on top of this car. So these events don't happen often, but when they do, our renters always text me and they're looking for flashlights or candles and stuff like that. And we don't really like having candles in there. That's just an increase in fire hazards. Burning candles is out. We even used to have battery operated candles, and people tried to light the wick on those thinking it was an actual candle. So we just removed all types of candles out. We keep a little lantern in there, but I want to help these renters out a little bit more today. So I brought down a power station for them. It's made by Powdeom. I haven't heard much about this power station, so I'm going to go over it a little bit once I get it inside and see if everything checks out. But otherwise, I'm going to leave this down here so our renters have an option of charging their phones, maybe running a TV set, some lamp, etc. Nothing too crazy, not a whole house generator or anything. So I'm going to discover a lot of things along with you guys, so let's just test this thing out and see if it's worthy of me keeping it down here for my renters. All right, so we're down in the basement of our cabin here, and I took it out of the box, and basically it was well packed. It just came with a manual, and then inside is a smaller box here, which has your cigarette lighter adapter, and then your AC plug. So this is a Powdeom EN700. And the 700 probably stands for the 700 watts you can get out of these AC plugs right here. The capacity of the battery is 614 watt hours. Powdeom pretty much puts this in the class of a Bluetti EB55 or a Jackery 500. It's in that sweet spot of portable power stations that you're going to use for just basic stuff. You can't really power anything over 700 watts. You wouldn't be able to use a coffee maker or hair dryer, stuff like that. But you could use lamps, TVs, lower voltage equipment, 12-volt refrigerators, just something nice in the event of a power failure. So as I mentioned, you have your two AC outlets here. Those are 700 watts, the 700 watt inverter. It's supposed to be a pure sine wave. We'll test that in a second. It also can peak at 1400 watts. Over here are your DC outputs and a DC input. So you have two USB type A ports that put out 5 volts at 2.4 amps. And then you have your USB-C port here, which is capable of 100 watts, which is great for laptops, especially like Macs. Here is a DC barrel input, and this is probably where you would want to plug in your solar panels. And this is also going to be where the cigarette lighter plug comes into charge. Next is a little LED flashlight here, and this is another reason I wanted something like this for our renters, because when the power goes out it gets pretty dark up here on the mountain. So having a light that's going to last a long time is great. It has a high setting, a low setting, and then of course your SOS setting, which is pretty much standard on a lot of these power stations. And then you have your 5521 barrel connectors here, 12 volt, 10 amp DC output here, cigarette lighter type. Each one is individually controlled. There's no master on switch, and then you have to individually turn on different sections of this power station. If you're coming over here and you just want to use the AC power outlets, just a quick button and that'll turn on your AC power outlets, turns on a display and off. Same thing with your DC. Same thing with your LED light. So I wanted to keep this simple for renters so there's not too much to know. On the back here is your input, and that's your AC input, and that is it. So it should be pretty simple for them to figure out if I leave this for them. And why don't we just plug this thing in right now. Fans come on. Right now it's charging at 522 watts. It can charge from 0 to 100% in 1.4 hours, or it can charge to 80% within an hour. So I didn't want something quick charging in case there were those instances where you had rolling blackouts and your power's on for a little while. You want to plug this in, top it off, and then if the power will go out, you had a full battery in no time. So this looks like it came with 66% of the battery. It's going to be fully charged now in 24 minutes. and it's inputting about 522 watts. So that's pretty fast for a power station. If I were to compare this to the Jackery 500, the Jackery 500 takes a lot longer to recharge. The Jackery 500 has less capacity. This has 614 watt hours, where I think the Jackery 500 has 537. But we'll do those comparisons. I'll show you a comparison sheet. Also, there's no power supply involved with this. It's just your AC cord, which I like. You don't have to carry another large power supply around with you, so that'll be simple for our renters also. On top here is nice and flat, so that's great for storing. We're going to store this in our owner's closet. I definitely like the packability with a flat power station and having a built-in handle that comes up like that. Just makes it so much easier for storage. I know with the EB55 it comes with a pretty large AC adapter that you have to carry around with you. It has a built-in fan and it stays on all the time. This has lithium iron phosphate batteries, where Jackery 500 has the NMC batteries, which don't last as long and are a little bit less safer. So lithium iron phosphate, you have about 3,000 cycles. So you have about 10 years of life into this power station, and it'll get you down to 80% after 10 years. So when it comes to inputs, you have the AC cord in the back that gets you 500 watts of input at least. It says 523 right now here on the display. If you're going to be using this, you're going to get around 100 watts or 120, and same thing with a solar panel. A solar panel is going to be 120 watts, and I think it says from 12 to 28 volts for a solar panel, a maximum of 120 watts. Okay, so we covered some of the basics. Let's go do some testing on this. So we got an hour down, and the power station is powering this 55-inch TV. Also the cable box, it's getting the router back here. Also a few other things, everything that's plugged into that strip outlet. So I just flipped from 3 hours left to 2 hours left, so I'm assuming there's close to 3 hours left on the battery. So 4 hours to run all this stuff is pretty good. I think if the power went out here, our renters would not spoil their evening if they had plans on watching TV or a movie or something like that. So we'll keep it going. We'll see what the full capacity is that we get out of the watt hours, if we're going to get to 614 watt hours or not. So we'll check back with you in a little bit. Coming up to close to the end of the battery here, and it still had about 8 minutes to go on the timer, but it just clicked off. Now the inverter ran for about 4 hours running all this equipment that I had up above. My meter says we used about 450 watt hours. I did have a little bit of usage before I turned the meter on, so I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt of 480. Divide that by 614, and that gives you approximately 78%. Now that 78% could go up if I only ran it for an hour with using higher wattages. That way the inverter is not consuming part of that capacity. You saw a pure sine wave earlier, and I put my old 1/2-inch electric drill on here just to show you that the sine wave still stayed intact. It did not get distorted. I expected that the circular saw was going to be too much for the power station, and it did cut out after a few seconds. Next we'll see if the charge time is as quick as advertised. The unit was fully discharged. I started my timer. At 1 hour they say the power station should be at 80%, and if we look here, the power station is actually 84% on the readout. Alright, we're getting very close to the end here. It's at 99%. They said at 1.4 hours that the unit would be fully charged. 1.4 hours should be at the 1 hour 24 minute mark. We just hit 100% at 1 hour 20 minutes. Then lastly, if you're a renter, let's say the power's out, it's in the evening, you're in the bedroom, you got all your stuff set up by your nightstand here, you're charging all your devices, you want to run a lamp, maybe a laptop, and there's plenty of capacity to do this for about 11 or 12 hours. Okay, so all in all, I think this power station is probably worthy of my renters down here to have in an emergency situation. It seemed to hold up to a couple tests over here pretty good, so running the TV and the cable box and all that stuff for 4 hours is pretty good. Also the simplicity of it for my renters, I like that idea. So if you're comparing this to the class that they want you to put this in, that's the Jackery 500, I think that this having no power brick to go along with it, just a power cord, it's a little bit more capacity than the Jackery 500. It has quicker charging than the Jackery 500 and a little bit better wattage output. And the outputs are about the same on a Jackery 500. But if I were to compare this to a Jackery 500 and this unit here, I think this is a no-brainer to pick this one. Because of lithium iron phosphide batteries alone, the more cycles, you just overall pros and cons, you got a lot more pros with this over the Jackery 500. Now when we compare it to the Bluetti EB55, this still has no need for power brick where the Bluetti does. It still has a larger capacity than the Bluetti. It charges quicker than the Bluetti. But if you want to look at the Bluetti specs, there's some trade-offs here. The Bluetti has a few more outputs. It has wireless charging on the top. Aesthetically, you might find it more attractive. But to compare it to the Bluetti, I think you want to comparison shop a little bit. Check out the prices. If this one is cheaper, you have no problem going with this one. You're not going to be steered wrong. If the Bluetti is cheaper, then you might want to jump on that one. I think that's going to come down to some finer needs that you're looking for between the two of them. I'm going to get ready to store this one in my runner's closet, and when the need arises, they can pull this out, charge their phones, run some lamps, run the TV set, pick up where they left off for about 4 hours at least. And just overall be a little bit more helpful, give them that little flashlight, which is much needed down here because it gets pretty dark when the power goes out up in here in the mountains. So all in all, a little bit more peace of mind for me. It doesn't happen often, but we do have occasional power outages up here. Maybe I would say around 6 a year, and a lot of them are short-lived, but some of them might be a hair longer, might take a couple hours, and sometimes worst case scenario, it might be a couple days. Luckily, that doesn't happen that often. So I appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoy and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when a new one is coming out. And keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.